Today we're gonna do a male haircut. We're gonna do scissors on top. He likes to comb it back, and we're gonna do a 3 fade on the side and make it blend down to a taper on his sideburns and in the back for a nice natural lay. I see on his head by examining it that he has a cowlick which grows up this way to the back and down here this way. So those are some of the things that I want to really be careful of while I'm cutting the hair. I'm gonna start by grabbing my clipper. I'm gonna start off by closing it so that it is a 3. If I open it, it's a 3.5, so I'm gonna close it to a 3, which is his desired level on the side. I don't wanna make the transition too high because I know this cowlick is a little bit, it's going down a little bit and it's going up here. So I'm gonna actually just go with the natural box right here, and I'm actually gonna do the 3 all around the head. What I do to one side, I always do to the other. I'm using a slight rocking motion called the C stroke around the ears. Don't be scared to just pull the ear down and go right across. And I'm going all around, making sure that I get all of the hair growth in whatever way it grows, especially down here toward the bottom. I want to make sure I go opposite of the hair growth so that he doesn't end up with any uneven spots. Toward the back, I'm just going to do the same thing. Make sure you're combing through so that hair does not get stuck to your client's head. You really want to know if you are taking out every hair that you're supposed to. Continue your way around the head. Still in the rocking motion, because going straight up will make a deep line of demarcation. This will still leave a line of demarcation, but it won't be as harsh as going straight up with it. Now I'm reaching the other side. Use the natural box as your guideline when doing it. And remember to always thoroughly comb to assure that you're getting all of the hair that you're supposed to. Around the ear here, he has some growth going back this way. I want to make sure I go right against it. Over here, his hair grows this way. I want to go right against it. So I made the base of what I want the bottom of my blend to look like. I now am going to take my 5. Of course, making sure that my blade is closed so that it is a 5 and not a...
All right, go ahead.
Okay. I want to make sure that the blade is closed and it is a 5. And I will begin slightly right underneath his cowlick because I can always come back and hit any line of demarcation with the thinning shears or clipper over comb technique. So be careful to not go up here for any reason because then it will be too short and then you're going to be stuck with hair standing up, which you really don't want. So I'm going to also do the rocking motion. And I'm going all across the head using my rocking motion. Make sure to follow through against all of the hair growth. Notice how the hair kind of starts to lay this way. Make sure that you go against it. If you need to go sideways on some areas, please feel free to. You always want to continue combing because you do want the natural lay always. You don't want to give your customer a haircut where hair is going to be standing up and he has to put gel in it just to keep it down. You really want to help with his natural hair texture. And I'm just going. And the same thing, I'm going right below the crown. I'm not touching this at all. I'm going right below the crown area, and that's what I'm blending. And to the side here, I'm making sure that I go against all of the hair strand so that I have a nice even haircut. Now that I've completed that step, all the way around the head, I will take my number 4 clip. I'll take my number 4, and this time I'm actually gonna open it up so that it's a 4.5. I now am gonna tack from below the crown, even a little bit lower, and I'm gonna tack this line of demarcation. Anything up here, I can always do with the thinning shears, and once I do scissor work on top, it'll lay better. And I'm gonna use the same stroke. And this haircut is very similar to the gentleman's haircut, which most businessmen get, which is a nice classy haircut, nothing too big of an upkeep. I'm just following through the rest of the head. Even if I don't see it cutting too much, I want to make sure that I don't skip any steps. I want to make sure that my haircut is symmetrical all around. So what I do to one side, I always do to the other. Making sure to go against all of the hair growth. Never going up too high and maintaining. Now, I'm gonna lower to a 4 by closing my blade. Whether you start from this side or that side, as long as you follow the steps on both sides, you will have the same end result. And I'm using the same C-stroke because I really do not want to make another line of demarcation, and I'm attacking that line of demarcation right there. Continuously combing to make sure that I'm getting every hair. I'm reassuring that I go all around the head. Again, if you doubt that if you think you missed a hair, please feel free to go back. Now that I'm done with that, I'm actually gonna switch down to my number 3. But this time, I'm gonna open it up so that it's a 3.5. I now see my line is getting almost invisible. I'm gonna use the same C-stroke and rocking motion to eliminate that line completely with the 3.5. If you have to use more tension on your comb, remember there are 2 sides to a comb. You can always use more tension when it comes to tight transition spots like this. Make sure you're not scared to pull down that ear. Make sure you go all around the head, not making any extra lines of demarcation. You're using your rocking motion. Notice how my clipper goes right up. It's not going right in, it's going right up to get that nice smooth blend. Make sure you go all around the head. And do not be afraid to use the mirror. The mirror is your best friend. So when you have any doubts, please refer back to your mirror, because the mirror is your best friend. And it will let you see any lines of demarcation that you might have missed as you were working. I'm now reaching the front of my demarcation line. Now I can start to see a nice smooth transition. So I want to double check my work by tilting the client's head and taking a step back just to make sure that it's nice and smooth. I see a little bit of a line of demarcation here that I can carefully touch up. By me only using one side of my clipper like this, it actually takes the motion of a thinning shear, because I'm only using probably about 4 or 5 of the teeth. So it actually gives me a nice blend, and I'm barely touching the hair. So I want to make sure he's nice all around. I can't forget that I didn't start with a 3.5, I started with a 3 on the bottom. So I'm gonna go right down. And I'm just gonna cross-check my work, make sure that I did not miss any hair. Especially down here, in troublesome areas like this. I am gonna taper the bottom of his neck, but I wanna make sure that my haircut has a good foundation. So I don't wanna skip any steps. And same thing I did to one side, I do to the other. I see a slight line of demarcation right about here. I'm gonna do the same motion, only using a corner of my actual clipper blade to just go up and just take some of that bulk area out of there. And I want to go back down to a 3. Make sure that I get all of these long hairs. I'm going in and actually cross-checking my haircut. I'm making sure that I am symmetrical on both sides. Okay, and we are done with that step now. I now am gonna go into some scissor action. I'm thoroughly gonna saturate the hair using low tension. This is just water. I'm always remembering to comb the hair with the natural lay. I don't want to go like this because it's going to form an illusion, and when he gets out of the shower, it's not going to lay exactly how I'm laying it. So I really want it to be natural. I want to make it easy for the typical to just wake up and be able to head right out of the door. And I want to work with his natural cowlick so that it's not standing up at all. Now that I've fully saturated the hair, Gonna grab my shears. He said he wants a little bit off. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna cut his hair at a 90. I'm gonna cut about an inch off. Using my guideline from the previous section, making sure I'm coming straight out of the head. If I cannot see my guideline, do not continue. And there's my guide. Continue to work your way through the hair. He expressed to me that he still wanted to comb back, nice and natural. Notice my guide is always present. If you ever do have a hard time finding your guide, please do not continue cutting, because that will result in holes in your haircut. Make sure you comb the hair to know that you're achieving that nice natural lay. I can see already that some of the weight has come off. I can also come this way. And I'm going right into the side. I'm going right around the crown area, because I know he likes to comb his hair, and his hair naturally lays to the right side. So I see that line of demarcation that we were talking about earlier, and there's my guide. Same thing here, there's my guide. And I'm just gonna connect the dots. There's my guide. There's my guide. Continuing all around the crown area so that you can get that nice lay. I want to double check to make sure that the hair is all even. Constantly combing the hair to make sure that it's laying the way that I want it to. I also want to use the mirror back here to make sure that there isn't this hard bulk, which is one of the biggest things that happens. Or right here where he has his cowlick, I really do not want it to stand up or be disconnected at all. So what I'm gonna do is actually, I said a 90 when we first started, but you will have to switch over here a little and over direct so that you're getting that nice lay. And notice there is always a guide. My guide is right there. This assures me that he will not go to style his hair and be standing up. Nobody wants to have an alfalfa in the back of their head. And I'm double checking just to make sure that my haircut is all even. Never be too scared or too proud to check your haircut twice, maybe 3 times, especially when doing shears. Notice how when I get here, I twist my finger position to adjust to that cowlick so I can have that nice lay. As I move my way around the head. So we have this bulk spot. I can do a few different things. I can do clipper over comb. I can do scissor over comb. I can do thinning shear. But what I'm gonna choose to do is I actually just go right in making sure that I don't get any extra hair. Go right in, chopping it up. There is always a guideline. There's my guideline. My guideline. Now I start to see nice softer lay. If I feel like it is necessary, I like to use my thinning shears. I just go in once, twice, comb it down, because I want to see the progress that I made. 1, 2. Moving on. And you can see the clear difference between how soft this lays and how natural compared to the front. And I'm going to attack this line of demarcation. Make sure you're combing after every time you snip so you can see any progress. And I am angling it out. Notice my comb is not anywhere near the scalp. I'm angling it out. Once I get lower, I know that I'm not going to angle as much. And I can really get down into these details. You want to make sure you turn your client's head just to make sure that he's not. And what I mean about combing the hair, right there, you might get confused and think it's line demarcation. Once I comb it naturally, you can actually see what a big difference it is. So I want to make sure that I see a little slight line right about here. Make sure I go right in. I'm moving right along the head. I'm not angling as much so that I know I'm cutting a little bit more hair. Here, I see a slight line of demarcation. I'm just gonna go in. 1, 2. Same thing. And I also see a slight line, not angling as much. And as I'm turning him, I see a little bit of a bulk area here. The higher that I go, the more that I'm actually elevating my comb. So notice as I go up, I'm elevating my comb more and more so that I don't have that line of demarcation. I know that it has a nice lay. I'm now going to continue to the tapering part of his haircut. But before I do that, I want to make sure that my client isn't too itchy. So I'm going to take a towel, a little bit of talc, and I'm just going to brush him off. And we do not want to use neck dusters because they are illegal to use professionally. So we want to be aware of that. Last thing we want to do is break any rules. Continuing to the tapering part. I know that he doesn't want a ball taper because of a prior consultation that we had. So I'm going to take my 1. And before continuing, actually, make sure you have a brush that you can just get the hair off of. I prefer to use a manicure brush because it really gets all of the hair out of there. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give him a tapered look. Nice, natural. I'm going to start off with a 1.5, which is my 1 guard by wall, open. And I'm making a clear line of demarcation. I can even go straight up on it, just to show you guys. Okay, I'm focusing to not go higher than right here. Right where this bend sort of happens, right in everybody's natural ear. I don't want to go any higher than that. I'm going to go all around the head. Down here toward his nape area, I'm going to do the same thing. Here I'm not going straight up. I'm actually using a slight rocking motion. I'm just going up maybe 1/2 inch. And I'm going all around. So I'm going to do the same thing. Right up above where the ear bends. Okay, so I did the 1.5. Now I'm going to take my 2 and close it, because I know that I did scissors here. I did a 5, a 4, and a 3 all around. I did a 1.5 here, so the thing that's in the middle of there is a 2. It would be a 2.5 or a 2. I'm going to jump right into the 2. And I'm going to use a rocking motion. And I'm going no higher than the top of the ear while I am blending. And I'm using the corners, as I mentioned earlier, to get that nice tapered effect. Because if I go like this, I'm going to make another line of demarcation, and next thing you know, your low taper ends up into a high fade, which I do not want to happen. What I do to one side, I always do to the other. And I'm using a slight rocking motion. I'm noticing I'm not making too big of a line of demarcation, which is good. Gonna move on to the other side. And again, I'm not fading up high. Keep your eye on the blade and how high it goes. It really doesn't go high. One common mistake is people go around the ear and start tapering. If the client requests it, then that is fine, but if they don't and they just ask you for a regular taper around the sideburns and the back, a lot of times they don't want around the ear, because then it just turns into a low fade. Make sure you consult with your clients just to make sure that you guys are both on the same page. Again, I'm gonna start off with the 1.5 again. This time, before I went straight up with it, this time I'm using my rocking motion against the line of demarcation. Do not be scared to pull the head up. It will give you more space to blend, and it'll give you more freedom to just flick up. Notice how my arm doesn't do too much of the work, so I'm not going like this. It's mostly my wrist that's doing the work. And I'm just lightly tapering it there. Making sure that I do not have any lines of demarcation. So I turn my client's head. Again, I'm only using the corners of my blade to blend this up. There we are. Now we'll move on to the back of the neck. And I'm just using the corner blend out that line of demarcation. That clear line right there comes right off. I'm using a nice flicking motion, making sure that I pull the head up so that I have, because no matter what, even if I go like this, I'm gonna go right into it. Make sure you give yourself room to flick by holding the scalp. Move on to the next side. And I want to go right around, remembering my mirror is my best friend. So I see a few lines of demarcation. I use discard, which is equal to a 1.5. And I'm gonna open it up. And I'm just gonna go with the upward rocking motion. And I can really start to see that line of demarcation really blend out of there. I'm gonna turn it all the way down. Knowing that my clip is a 1.5, I will go all the way down and blend out the remaining line. Now I see no line of demarcation. I can now move forward to the back. Never be scared to hold the scalp to give you more space for blending. And I have my blade open. And now I'm gonna put it all the way down and attack that last line of demarcation that I see. With my corners, of course, making sure that I do not make any extra lines of demarcation for myself. Now moving on to the next side. I see a slight line of demarcation here, slight little bit of disconnection. So I'm gonna do the same thing. Have my 1.5 open. Now I really start to see that blending out, giving that nice natural fall. I put it down all the way. And I'm now going to finish it off. Now that I see that there are no line of demarcations, if I think that I see any, see something slightly in the back. Due to the hair growth, we really want to make sure that there are no lines of demarcation. If there are, we do not want to leave them. And since he has light spots here, and these sort of situations will happen, I did it all with a 1.5, but you see this clear line because his hair isn't consistently thick. I'm actually just gonna drop him down to a 1. On those dark areas. Don't be scared to pull the head up. I will now go into detailing the haircut. Now that I am done with all of my clipper work, make sure that your clippers are free of hair. Make sure that your model is free of hair because it is very uncomfortable. I will now use my wall detailers. I'm gonna start in the back. Two main differences. That was a clipper, which takes off bulk. These are trimmers, which is more for fine lining, enhancing the person's natural hairline, designs, and so forth. I want to really keep him natural. So I don't want to just make any lines. I want to really follow the contour of his hairline. Because the last thing anybody wants is having 5 o'clock shadow after 2 days. So I'm gonna follow the natural line around the ear. I'm using the corner in spots that it is tight. I'm just moving on down, lifting his head up. I will now go around the ear. And I found 3 easy steps that make me have the perfect arch without giving somebody a white wall. Pulling the ear forward, combing down. I'm able to attack the back section of the ear. By pulling the ear straight down, I'm able to attack this. And by actually following his natural hairline and pulling the ear back for the third motion, I get all of the essential areas into giving him a nice natural rounding. And if I see any extra hair, I can always go back in to the previous section. He explained to me that he wants square sideburns. Make sure whenever you make sideburns, pick a reference in the ear that you will reference to, whether it's here and they want a long one, whether it's in the middle, or whether it's here. Pick something on the ear that you can relate to. Right here, I chose to go right above here. So I know when I go over to the next side, that's my reference point. I'm gonna go ahead and take off any extra hair that is in the way. Any extra hair that I see, can always go back in. Since he does have like a nice natural, I want to look at him straightforward and make an analysis on where I'm going to square it off at. So I see that he's pretty even on both sides. So I picked my reference point. I first start enhancing the hairline with everybody's natural square. His is very, very weak on here and will not connect So I'm actually gonna start his natural square to about here, where it's a little bit stronger. I'm gonna use a corner to really just outline. So I now made my corner. That's my reference point. I now will take the corner and I will actually just, will go right up to where I want it to be. And I'm connecting the dots. By making myself this first reference point, I prevent pushing back the hairline to anywhere where I don't want it to be. And I can also just go right down with it. If I see any loose ends, I can feel free to go back using my corners. Just to show a quick difference on what outlining or defining somebody's natural line does for a haircut is this. This is one side finished as the other side undone. It brings a great deal of definition to their face, brings out their facial features. It's an overall positive thing. I'm gonna do the same thing that I did on one side to the other, as always. I'm just gonna use a natural line. And whenever you're using high-powered deep trimmers, be very wary of not doing this and scraping, because that will cause skin irritation. If you get your high-powered detailers, just tap. That's enough. I'm gonna do the same ear motions that I did, pushing the ear forward, step one. Pushing the ear down, step two. And pushing the ear back, step three. I'm also remembering my reference point from the other ear, which is here. I want to make sure that I am connecting my dots very well. Being careful to not lift up too much on the natural hairline. Again, I will turn my client to me, have him face up, and realize where I want his first reference point to be, because I do want him to be symmetrical. Figured out it was about here. I'm using my corners for precision. I'm looking straight at him to make sure. If I'm not sure on how thick I made the last sideburn, please do not hesitate to go back and check. And again, I'm just gonna go right in and just follow my dots. Any excess hair, I go right down with it. Looking straight at him, I see that I need to do a little bit of fine tuning. Making sure that he is symmetrical on both sides. I'm using my corners for precision in these tight areas. When you see him straight up, you can actually see that his points match on his head, his reference points, which is what I wanted. Once you have that, you can actually go back and finish the back of it. He can either have it rounded or squared. Would you like it rounded or squared? He indicated he would like it rounded. I want to stay as natural as possible. So I'm just going to tap the hairline. Since I have my two guys.